Lonely Monk Productions.
I don't know if y'all have had COVID yet, but yo, that is not my Jawn. What's good, friends and family, neighbors near and far? Welcome to the final episode of Season 5 of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. The podcast, website, brand, movement, way of life dedicated to the embrace and championing of your passions. I am your host, Nate Runkle, a.k.a. the man from Runkle, a.k.a. Nate 3.0. Back at it again with yet another episode of the podcast. As always, I hope this podcast finds you all in good health and in good spirits. Happy New Year, my friends! I hope it is going well for you and yours, and I hope the holidays have treated you all perfectly. Me? Well, as you may have just heard and may now hear in my voice, well, your boy got the COVID call-up. Yeah, that's right. After ducking the virus for 5 long years, I finally got tapped. But hey, I had a good run. I feel like shit, but my head's above the water, so I shouldn't complain. But the year has ended, which of course brings us to the end of Season 5, so I had to say my goodbyes. 2024 was a weird one indeed. You know, to borrow from the Hold Steady, we had some massive highs and we had some crushing lows, but we're not going to speak on them bad days, so let's just celebrate our highs. We had some great highs over here this year. We'll get to all the amazing guests and conversations I had over the year, but before we do, some of the extracurriculars. You know, I was lucky enough to guest on a bunch of other great shows, starting the year off on my pal Dan Drago's 25 O'Clock podcast. I have affectionately referred to Dan as my podcast big brother, so to get to hang out with him on his show meant the world to me. You know, I did a couple of pop-ins on the fantastic show Single Season Record, hosted by my pals Derek Armijo and Brian Strang, and we got to yuck it up about some TV shows that only ever lasted for 1 season. I made a return to the Risk storytelling podcast to try out a new format for the show where I told a story from my high school degenerate years. And I told that story to Kevin Allison, who got to interject and ask questions as the story unfolded. It was wonderful. Yeah, I jumped on the movie trivia quiz show podcast, What Did We Just Watch?, hosted by Mark Nasel, and I emerged the victor, armed with my acute knowledge of the 1989 classic Tango and Cash. And I got to sit in on your next favorite band podcast with my good buddy Phil Reese, not once, but twice. We just did our yearly hang to break down this year's WXPN 88.5 Greatest Songs of the 21st Century Countdown, but Phil also invited me on for a chat about my favorite subject, me. We finished up our tabletop RPG podcast, Oops All Bards, that I produced for my homie Jillian Ashley Blair Ivy, brought to you by the Porch Room Network. I started DJing at Why Not Radio, fulfilling a dream I've had since I was a youngin' to be on the radio. And I kicked off a brand new show this year. Too Old, Too New with my good friend Bruce Warren from WXPN has been an absolute delight to put together and bring to you each and every week. I got to once again speak to the Indiana University School of Liberal Arts audio production and podcasting class about my journeys in podcasting. And I was invited to stand alongside Dan and Phil at this October's Inside Hustle, put on by the Philly Music Fest and WXPN as part of the first podcast table. Both of those gave me the opportunity to speak to the next line of creators coming up, and I gotta tell y'all, the kids are all right. We are in good hands. And all that brings us back to here, the flagship, Yo, That's My Jawn, where it all starts, where it all begins. You know, I know in the tail end here we had a sporadic schedule, but this season, like the 4 that came before it, brought me so many great and incredible conversations with guests I've longed to have on the show, and new artists and friends who caught my ear and excited me all throughout the year. So, a big shout out to Charlie Harding from Switched on Pop, Matt Pond, Dee Gerhardt and James Daniels from Chestnut Grove, Craig Wedren, John Vatisse, Eliza Hardy Jones, Paul Myers, Carsey Blanton, Sierra Grace, Autumn Luz and Sam Wee. We had Alex Wash from the Grand Dogs, Matthew Taglang and Dave Perry from Athensville, and in their episode, the recently released Tyree Wallace. Welcome home, brother. Paige Stark came through. We had Shug Daniels, Nicole Regal, Julian Hyatt, Kirk Nowie, and James Downey, Gabby Rose, Skylar Fisk, Josh Ostrander from Mondo Cosmo, Christy Jacobson, Dave Hill, and Jack Houston. And, of course, my dudes, the brothers Ferris, James and DX. Thank each and every one of you for taking the time to hang out on the show. And thanks to all my collaborators this year, Jillian Ashley Blair Ivy and the cast of Oops All Bards. We had Ashley Banks, Ann Coleman, Ross Curry, Tej Sinha Das, Bob Killian, and Chris Klinecki, and the crew over there at the Porch Room. Thanks to Bruce Warren for agreeing to start a podcast with me, and thanks to Nicole Atkins for being such an incredible pal and hanging out with us on the show. Thanks to my brothers in pod, Dan Drago and Phil Reese, Josh T. Landau and Joey O over at Why not just for welcoming me on the station, but for giving me the time I needed and welcoming me back when I was ready to return. And thanks to Greg Seltzer and Dave Plow for letting me share my knowledge. And thanks to you, the person listening to this right now. You and everyone else who has let me invade their time in any or all of my endeavors this year, I love and appreciate you all. I am forever grateful. Love and shouts out to my kick-ass sister Natalie and her boyfriend Zach for always being in my corner. And last, but absolutely never least, all of my love and thanks to my incredible wife Katie. I have struggled really hard this past year, and your love and support has kept me here and continues to keep me on the right side of the dirt. So I love you to the That's No Moon and back. Well, that's it for this year. Happy New Year's, friends and family. I love you all. We'll be back here in 2025 to kick off the season 6 of the Yo, That's My Jawn podcast. Oh my God, sexy season 6. I am already in discussions with a few guests that will absolutely knock your socks off, so keep an eye out for that. And then Too Old and Too New will return this January, and I'm back on Why Not Radio every other Monday, so tune in for the musical hang. And guys, keep your eye out for season 2 of Oops All Bards coming later in 2025. But for now, that's it. That's a wrap. Happy New Year. Blue skies. Until next time, everybody.